This is Gradowski and Jason Burmis of WeAreChange.org, and holy cow, Alex Jones is trending right now in a surprise interview that he just did with Joe Rogan that has went on for over 4 hours, had over 180,000 people watching at once. And again, Jason and me have been pretty critical of Alex Jones before, but there's no denying that he is an entertainer and knows how to get people's attention. He even upstaged Michael Cohen, and that's why in this video, we are going to be talking about the holographic universe CIA document, the little elves, DMT, forced sterilizations, the meaning of life, Alex Jones having makeup put on him by an older woman and being choked out. But essentially, what we're going to be talking about here are two main things. Some of the exaggerated, crazy stuff, the nonsense, and of course, some of the bigger truths, some of the reality, some of the bigger context here that actually has some legitimacy. Jason, do you agree with my initial assessment? And what were some of the bigger truths brought up in this 4-hour-long interview that you thought were very important?
Well, just so everybody knows, I did not catch the entire 4.5 hour interview. I was actually editing some David Icke stuff that you could probably look for our channel. That was actually pretty close to this, because what we had here, the Icke interview, which everybody's going to see, is about DMT, frequencies, how much we see of the universe. And Alex Jones actually told us what the physical representation of God was today, that he was a comet with the tail end of Lucifer saying, "Satan, get behind me." That was part of it. I don't know what else to say. There was a lot, and I mean a lot to go over, especially because it was almost 5 hours, if not 5 hours on the nose. But the meat of it before Eddie Bravo got there and then it rolled back around was, again, this idea of not only a holographic universe, but a holographic universe that is apparently run by interdimensional demons posing as alien life forms, using Greys as avatar-like robots to communicate with the elite here in this country and throughout the world, but starting with the Swiss and the Germans. Luke?
I mean, he also talked about being connected with Trump on a spiritual level, and that's why supposedly the CIA freaked out about him and started cracking down and censoring him. But what do you make of all of this? Because there's obvious, even CIA documents that you showed me and you kind of sent me before even doing this video with me that talk about on the CIA's own website how the universe could be a hologram and how our brains could manifest reality. I mean, I think there is some kind of truth, even though it's not kind of universal truth, but I think the realm of possibility is possible here, that our perception, of course, is limited and that there is a lot more out there. Now, whether Alex Jones is perceived right and wrong, how do you see it in this bigger kind of documented context?
Well, exactly, Luke. So what people are looking at to the left of us is this document from 1983 that has now been declassified. Total CIA document, absolutely legitimate. You can find it on their website. This isn't Jason Burmis saying it. Now, when I'm telling you this, I want to let everybody know I wasn't a part of this experiment. I don't know how legitimate it is, but there's an awful lot of information in here where they claim they've accessed certain points of the human brain, and through a hypnosis-like state that they create, your mind holographically projects reality. Now, none of this is new if you've listened to the likes of David Icke. And the analysis and assessment of the gateway process is the name of this experiment and documentation. Anybody can look at it. How true it is, how far these experiments really went, and how much this is based in reality is up for people to decide. My problem is when you start talking about Eisenhower and other figures meeting in secret with these supposed biological interdimensional beings that are accessed through ayahuasca and DMT. In fact, in this document, they don't really talk about hallucinogens a lot. This wasn't, say, an extension of MK Ultra or Artichoke or those types of programs. And let's not forget, although this is in 1983, Luke, we had Philip K. Dick, and the reason I'm mentioning him here is because he's the author of Blade Runner, essentially. What do androids dream of electric sheep? What Blade Runner is based on. And Jones also brought up that the Blade Runner technology, more human than a human, was predecessed by MIT in the 60s, that they knew all about this stuff. So it all kind of hooks in. And remember, Philip K. Dick is the original purveyor of the holographic universe theory, saying that deja vu was kind of a glitch in the Matrix before the Matrix existed.
Now, I remember spending some time with, a PSYOP military head up kind of guy in Chile, and there's a lot of realms of possibilities here. But again, this talk is fascinating, but again, very kind of, it could be made up. It could be totally, just made up out of nowhere. But it was, I got to say, it is interesting hearing someone talk about how the government has special agents that take DMT and talk to aliens to give us technology, how special government agents have taken too much DMT that now they need to artificially have their heart stopped and have oxygen put into their blood. Again, all realms of possibility, but of course, very skeptical. But one of the things that Alex Jones did talk about a lot that shocked Joe Rogan, and let's be honest here, is 100% correct, is of course the history of human experimentation that was done by the U.S. government. Now, obviously, they talked about the Tuskegee experiments, but they also talked about the forced sterilization programs that happened in Peru. Bigger topics that do need to be discussed that have happened that lead to people being skeptical of government and hearing bigger truths that they naturally wouldn't. Now, all the other stuff, a lot of hyperbolic, a lot of exaggerations, a lot of stuff that is wild out there. I mean, Alex kind of brings bits and pieces together and kind of blows it up into one big meaningful thing. And a lot of times, let's just be honest here, sometimes it's just made up. So, I mean, when he's talking about mind control and IQ and talking about how robots are going to take over the world, sure, that's one trajectory that humanity could go on. But again, too much speculation, too much out there, just out of the realm of, many, many different possibilities. What were some of the crazier topics? What were some of the most exaggerated stuff that you heard that stuck out with you the most, Jason?
Well, I think that when you alluded to the fact that government agents were going into meetings with these beings by having their hearts stopped and having oxygen pumped in their blood, personally, I would need a little bit more evidence to believe that other than Alex Jones talking about it. However, I'm glad that you brought up the experimentation, because as this was happening, I actually texted Rob Dew. Rob Dew appeared to be with him. He was tweeting out photographs prior to the interview, and I thought to myself, well, that's great we're talking about Peru, Luke, but the bottom line is we've done much worse than that in this country, and not just to black people. In fact, if anybody wants to check out this Associated Press article from all the way back in 2011 that discusses how in the 1960s in this country, we injected the elderly patients in a Brooklyn hospital with cancer and other horrible things, including hepatitis. Folks, that's the tip of the iceberg. They injected mentally retarded children with herpes. Okay, this is stuff that I covered almost a decade ago. And it was sometimes when I was with InfoWars. So it was kind of surprising to me that he wasn't able to pull something up as good as this, because, yeah, it's great, but it still kind of pervades that thing that the white man is oppressing brown people in Peru. And there is some racism based in this eugenics, Luke. In fact, the conversation kind of ended with Margaret Sanger targeting black people, which she did at Ku Klux Klan rallies and in her works on eugenics, saying that essentially they were weeds that had to be dealt with.
Yeah, and she's the founder of Planned Parenthood, which, again, many people don't like to talk about. They also talked about the abortion thing, but I think the most controversial thing that's going to happen out of all of this is Alex Jones debating with Eddie Bravo that he doesn't believe in the moon landing and he doesn't believe that the earth is flat. I think that's going to be the major controversial point here that's going to have a lot of people shocked here. But another thing he brought up, which I think needs more clarifications, and I think he does need to be pressed on, he mentioned something earlier on in the interview about a globalist trying to buy him out for $10 million. Now, I mean, if you're going to say hyperbolic stuff like that, if you're really going to be supposedly the spear on the head, you better give us some details if you want people to trust you, if you're going to say stuff like that. And obviously, a lot of it is entertainment. A lot of it is hyperbolic. A lot of it you do have to take with a grain of salt. But nonetheless, I think fascinating conversation, interesting conversation. Definitely made a lot of people talk. Some bigger truths out there, and also a lot of bullcrap out there. That's my assessment. What's your kind of final word on this, Jason?
Well, you know what? I'm gonna bring it twofold here, Luke. We're gonna talk about a couple things because you hinted at some of the more ridiculous when you talked about Alex Jones saying he wore makeup as a child. Okay, so not as a child, guys. Let's wrap this into one big sentence. Alex Jones said as a 12-year-old, he let a 17-year-old girl put makeup on him so he could have sex with her, and he later had to fight her 30-year-old boyfriend in a parking lot. I'll leave it at that. I wrapped that into one little ball, but I found that hugely entertaining. And he's like, I'll wear the makeup. That sounds great. What I did,
as he's begging Eddie Bravo to choke him out, he's like, Eddie, choke me out, Eddie. I'm like, what the? Obviously, it's just absolutely craziness in that entire interview. 4 hours long. That's our take on it.
Luke,
anything else you want to say about this specific issue other than that image? Why did you even say that?
Because there's one other thing I'm going to give him credit for. Now, I don't know whether this was, Johnny nonsense. I can say that, I've met Jones's father. He did my teeth. He was a rather nice man. But at one point, Jones starts talking about not only, they had a nuclear reactor under UT, but he also said that they had virtual reality back in the 60s, gloves and all this other stuff. Now, immediately, my nonsense trigger went off. To my surprise, there was actually a 1957 patent, and people should really check this out. We're going to show some of this, for a VR machine called Sensorama Simulator. Now, it was not like Jones described, but if you scroll down and see what it was, folks, this is VR before VR. Here's a very rare YouTube video of actually what some of the people were seeing. Remember, this would be side by side. If you had an Oculus or a Samsung Gear, it's similar. And what are they doing? They're riding in what appears to be like a military type dune buggy or a car. And you would kind of have the same experience of going to a 3D movie. Now, if you look at this patent, it looks so much like my Oculus Rift. It is amazing. From the goggles to the headset to where the earpieces are, we have to realize that, again, this is breaking out in 2015 for the first time? We were able to really get our hands on some commercialized virtual reality headsets. Folks, this is a patent from 57 and a product that was around in 1962. So I know a lot of us want to laugh at Mr. Jones and be dismissive of him and talk about the clockwork elves, and I think that we should do that. But we also give credit where credit is due here at We Are Change. And the Sensorama stuff is something I think we should look at, Luke.
Yeah, and especially the government experimentation and just simply not trusting and believing in government and giving away your power. And again, again, there's some things to make fun of. I mean, he pretty much was like, I'm not saying it was clockwork elves, but it was clockwork elves. Like, they literally contradicted themselves so many times. Just so much information, jam-packed, thrown at you. It's hard to decipher it. If you thought we did a good job somehow deciphering it, click the like button on this video. But ultimately, what do you guys think about this 4-hour-long deep dive down the rabbit hole adventure that got into so many different topics? And again, don't forget, we are listener-supported independent media that rely on you and your support, because if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be here. And that's why I end every single video by saying, love you guys. Thank you again so much for watching. Stay tuned for more here on youtube.com/We Are Change.